Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you sit. I'm Tony Sargis with the Commerce Department. We're on our last session of the day for Export Week. Well, thanks you for everyone for joining us. Just a quick note that this webinar is being recorded. If you object, please disconnect at this time. But a reminder that this is a listen-only mode for participants, so you should be muted and your camera should be off. Colin, you may begin.
Thank you, Tony. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today's session, Digital Strategy and Exporting. Let's go to the next slide. If you have any questions today during the webinar, please go to the Q&A button at the top of the screen there and enter your questions, and we'll try our best to answer the questions as we go through the webinar. As Tony just mentioned, it is being recorded, and for anyone that wasn't able to join this webinar today, they will receive a copy, as will everyone else. Just a quick thank you to our sponsors today, our main sponsors, Globis and Shipman. So thank you to them for sponsoring this series. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our Director of E-commerce, James Bledsoe. Please, James, over to you.
Thank you very much, Colin. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this morning and taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this webinar that will talk about digital strategies for your export readiness here. Do we have the slides up, Colin? Yeah, thank you. So what I'll be doing is setting the context for the topic that we'll be discussing on digital strategy today. We'll be featuring our strategic partner, IBT Online. Eva Mitzi will be talking about that with mutual client Apex Instruments, miles right from that, about digital strategy growth. But before we get to that interesting feature, we'll go through some boring data first and some information. So next slide, please, Colin. So I don't know if the other webinars in this series have discussed this yet, but I would be remiss if I didn't touch on what it is us as an organization, the U.S. Commercial Service, does for businesses, just big picture, helping you export. So here we have this slide articulating our main areas that we help you with as businesses when it comes to getting your products and services overseas and money back home to you. It's export counseling. How do I do A, B, or C? How does this work? It's also market intelligence we can help you with as far as understanding where your products and services sell internationally, as well as business matchmaking services through our U.S. Embassy posts overseas. And then we also have commercial diplomacy help. For instance, if you ship frozen French fries, for example, and they have a container of your frozen French fries stuck in the port of Chennai, and you need help getting that unfrustrated there at that port, that's something that we can also help you with. So next slide, please. What the focus is of today's presentation is e-commerce, though. Exporting is a part of e-commerce. E-commerce is a part of exporting. To me, they're just overlapping Venn diagrams that shift depending upon what you're talking about. But the main point of all of our presentations, all of my presentations in this field, is to articulate that the e-commerce sales channel is growing and will continue to grow despite economic contractions, recessions, you name it. E-commerce will continue to grow as a viable sales channel for the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. So what does e-commerce look like worldwide? Well, just some broad figures here. We have the US and Europe still growing at a faster pace than the rest of the world when it comes to total e-commerce revenue. Next slide, please. Drilling down into that total e-commerce and separating out the B2C, business to consumer, the retail data from that, we can see that there are some strong segments in electronics, fashion, furniture, and toys, hobby, and DIY. The interesting thing, and this should be fairly obvious on the surface when you think about it, is that luxury goods are still the leading vertical in those sectors for overseas sales for obvious reasons. Disposable incomes, luxury goods, it's put two and two together there when it comes to sales. Next slide, please. Further drilling down into these business to consumer markets, Philippines. The Philippines are the fastest growing market out there when it comes to retail e-commerce sales growth, followed by India, which is a far larger market. And then we've also got a wild card in there, Malaysia, quickly growing as well as potential markets. So when you think of e-commerce sales overseas, don't think of the usual suspects, but understand that there's well over several hundred countries out there. The list is almost always changing to choose from there. So let's take a look at what's growing out there. The main leading cross-border e-commerce purchases worldwide that we can see here in the bottom right chart, we can see are China, and that is being led purely by population growth there. Their population outweighs any country combined, really, followed by Germany. And it's impressive to see that they are one of the leading cross-border e-commerce countries out there. But that usually comes from within the EU cross-border e-commerce, because each one of those EU countries is its own country. A lot of us Americans tend to overlook that fact, especially when given the context of our United States and being landmass about roughly the same size. There are specific markets that stand out as very e-commerce friendly there overseas. Next slide, please. Now, I talked about B2C. What about B2B? Well, B2B is the large e-commerce pie to me, of which retail and consumer goods is just a small slice of it. So when it comes to what's happening with B2B, it's very easy to look to B2C, and you should look to B2C as far as what those trends are that will then be bleeding over to B2B. But the majority marketplaces for B2B transactions, you can see are throughout the world. But two outliers I want to highlight for everybody are Japan and Korea as marketplaces here. You can see the shift to going to e-commerce. Here you can see in Japan and South Korea, they are still very staunchly person-to-person business countries. So where I'm going with this is e-commerce isn't the same universally across all countries. You have to stop and take a look and go, okay, how is e-commerce being done in this particular country? Is it something where it's more of a back burner function for B2B, such as in Japan and South Korea, where I'm going to need to travel there to get this business to happen? Or is this going to be more technologically facilitated, like here in the US or in India, for example? Next slide, please. So SEO, as we'll come to touch on with IBT and Apex Instruments, is a very broad topic that covers a lot of things from the technical to the marketing side that is somewhat complicated to break down. And so you really need to have a digital strategy of sorts, step-by-step to help walk you through this. Next slide, please. Now, the digital strategy is something that is subjective to each business. What are priorities? What are needs? What are goals and objectives? Part of that digital strategy is, and always should be, search engine optimization. It doesn't matter what you do for your business and your websites and social media and how much money you spend if your website simply isn't functioning as it should. And how do you know if it's functioning? Well, have you looked at all? Not just recently, but at all. How do you know if you don't actually go and check? The reason being is I've done several hundred of these WGR gap analysis services for our business clients. And time again, there's these issues that businesses aren't always readily aware of because they're under the hood type situations. For instance, to use your car for an analogy, do you know that your serpentine belt is got dry rot on it and might crack in 1,000 miles? No, you don't, unless you look under your hood and have a mechanic look at that serpentine belt and go, yes, there's dry rot on that and it will crack in about 1,000 miles. It's the same thing with computers. Unless you have somebody actually look at your website and actually test it to tell you, yes, this is working and no, this isn't working and you need to fix this, you simply don't know. And so that's what our WGR gap analysis service does, is let you know what you don't know and what the search bots know. So we use 2 technical SEO reports in addition to our best practices to provide recommendations on how you can improve your online overseas sales for a very affordable $100 price. Next slide, please. So with that WGR teaser there, that SEO service for your business, and again, don't take my word for it. You don't have to do our service, but I would recommend doing any kind of service out there for search engine optimization. But I don't want to leave you empty-handed without some resources to take some next steps after we hear from IBT Online and Apex Instruments right after this. So the e-commerce frontline library is a resource we have on trade.gov where you can go and look and see what kind of content search bots like, because this content in this blog is actually structured to be SEO friendly. So if you're looking to understand how should my pages look, somewhat like these pages, on top of the fact that these pages are also covering topics you might be interested in, such as understanding how e-commerce marketplaces work or how international search engine optimization also works. So it's really twofold resource in this e-commerce frontline library available on trade.gov. Next slide, please. We also have a ongoing series with our strategic partner, IBT Online, which you'll hear from Ava here shortly. You can find last year's series recorded and register for these recordings on trade.gov here on the Grow Your Exports series page. Next slide, please. And we also have e-commerce market research. So from our official publications, the country commercial guides that we publish through the US embassies, we've taken out the e-commerce sections. So you can focus just on that and added them here on this one convenient page for you to understand how to do e-commerce in Vietnam, how to do e-commerce in South Africa or Ghana. It's all on here. Next slide, please. And then wrapping up with the actionable resources here. So with our WGR gap analysis, our SEO service that we run, we look at your website and we tell you what's wrong with it. We do not fix anything. Just like you go to the mechanics and you plug in your car to that diagnostics machine, that's our service right there. It tells you what is working and what is not working objectively. And we tell you objectively what should and shouldn't be worked for the purpose of overseas sales. Who does fix those issues? Who does add a South Africa landing page? Who adds made in the USA or an American flag icon to your website? The e-commerce business service providers. They're in your local area. And so we have this directory here, a referral resource for you to find those service providers should you need them after our WGR service. And with that, last slide, please. A reiteration of all of our services out there that I'm sure Apex Instruments has used before. I know IBT Online has definitely capitalized on some of our resources out there in the Tradewinds trade mission vein that they just participated in. But we also have global industry teams to help you out there, you businesses, as well as trade show representation. So if you're attending any industry trade shows out there and wondering if you could meet any buyers there at the trade show, Well, gosh, wouldn't you know it? That's what we do and focus on as a organization. So reach out to us, preferably ahead of time, so we can help arrange those meetings for you at those trade shows. And then with that, I'll come to my last slide here. If you have any questions about e-commerce, feel free to reach out to me or your local trade specialist. I'll now be turning this over, I believe, to Colin to introduce IBT, or will I be introducing IBT?
Go ahead, please, James. You can go ahead and introduce them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin. I would like to go ahead then and introduce a mutual working colleague of ours. Colin's been working with IBT as well, doing some webinar outreach, but IBT Online is our strategic partner for the last 2 fiscal years. We've been doing a lot of great outreach with them, doing webinars and local office masterclasses, really focused workshops similar to this one. And Ava has been a wonderful resource in IBT Online in presenting in this outreach, as well as really just working closely with us at the U.S. Commercial Service. And she's brought on client Apex Instruments to talk more on digital strategy. So Ava, please introduce yourself a little bit and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, James. Thank you, Colin. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to be sharing my screen, talking a little bit more about digital strategies. Please don't hesitate as you have any questions, put them in the chat so that I can answer as well. Hoping that everyone can see my screen. Yes, as James has just said, my name is Ava. I'm a business development manager with IBT Online. I'm currently sitting in South Africa, but based predominantly in Paris, and we have our headquarters in Fort Lauderdale. So I travel a lot for different trade missions. As James has just outlined, IBT Online is a full stack digital marketing company. What we do in our capacity is in building great websites, localized websites, e-commerce, online marketing, focused on helping American businesses, helping America's exporters. This map is a demonstration of the different contracts that we have with the different economic development agencies, but we also have a strategic partnership with the U.S. Commercial Service, which is invaluable to us as we help and support American businesses in their objectives in their target markets. So it makes us better equipped and better prepared to serve our clients, to make sure that we're ahead of the curve, to make sure that we're addressing the challenges that American businesses are facing. And what I want to do today is talk a little bit about the future of sales and the future of sales trends that we're seeing. The future of sales is really digital. And, all of this presentation is about e-commerce, and some of the biggest trends that we're seeing are directly in line with e-commerce trends. These are really fascinating. And it's our job as a company to really help, as a digital marketing company, to be on top of the trends, ahead of the curve, making sure that we're delivering best practices for all of our customers that are trying to reach their international target markets, whether that's Brazil, whether that's France or Mexico, etc. Digital is the way forward. And it's proven in the data because more and more people are online, and it's just a no-brainer. And everybody here on this call knows that we spend so much of our time today leveraging the internet, leveraging the web. Average daily time around the world is up to 6 hours and 40 minutes. That doesn't even come close to the amount of unique mobile phone subscribers, which is 70% of the world. And 67.5% of which are leveraging the internet. Close to that also are social media. So all of these trends are pointing in the same direction, which says that digital is a way for companies to represent themselves internationally, be known in their domestic and international markets, punch above their weight, really address the challenges and showcase their products and their services adequately with passion, like really giving the best of their brand online if you have the ability to leverage the digital strategies today. Going quickly to e-commerce, this is the amount of weekly online purchases, and it's a very quick demonstration just to say that it's an ongoing trend, and it's a trend that doesn't seem to be stopping. The percentage of internet users aged 16 to 64 who buy something online each week represented on this graph. And as you can see, the worldwide average is at 57.6%. Right below that is the US average, which means that there's many markets out there around the world that are buying more weekly than US consumers, which, you know, US consumers already buy a huge amount, but isn't that fascinating to know that your international target markets are also equipped and e-commerce ready, leveraging e-commerce and, you know, leveraging the web to buy. So the future of sales, you know, to be quickly, succinctly defined, is digital first. The future of sales is a hyper automated process today. It doesn't look like what it used to look like 20 years ago. It's a digital first engagement with your customers, where your prospect, your customer, your partner, etc., wants to know you, wants to get to know you, wants to read about you online and digitally. The second part is that it's very omni-channel, and this goes hand in hand with the digital approach, but customers want to be able to find you that in a way that you're always on, that you're offering a personalized experience, and that you're offering an omni-channel experience, which means that you don't just have a website, you also have a LinkedIn, you also have a WhatsApp for business, you also leverage Twitter or X. You have many different ways for the customer, the prospect, and the distributor to reach you. The final piece is that it's really customer centric. It's about giving the customer or the prospect a fantastic experience. So the companies have to invest in a digital technology approach, in a digital strategy that amplifies and augments the customer's best experience of your brand, best experience of your business. So it used to be that the business, was at the center of the business model. So the product itself, the service itself, etc. And that has really changed, where the customer, how you delight the customer, how you show up for them, is at the center of the business model. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that when we talk about how do you do a better job at selling your business online. And the big thing that we're going to be talking about today is the buyer persona, the domestic buyer persona versus your international buyer persona. So what is a buyer persona? A buyer persona is not a company, it is a person. It is a fictional representation of a person that exists in the market. And so the buyer persona that exists in the US, in your domestic US market, versus the one that exists in Mexico, versus the one that exists in India or Canada, etc., is very different. So the more you know about that buyer persona that you're going after, the more you can make a targeted approach. So this is an example of L'Oréal, who is they are willing to spend a lot of money thinking about their digital presence in each of their target markets. So the one here is US website for L'Oréal, top of the building, only female, very professional. This one from Mexico, the .mx website, which shows a much more fun, caring, amicable photo, also at the top of the building, also looking professional. There's men in the image. And so how are they catering to their international buyer persona? The reason that you need to cater for your international buyer persona is that is how you can set your KPIs, your key performance indicators, know what you actually want to achieve per market. So your strategy in Canada is going to be different to your strategy in Mexico, for example. This is just an example to show that a social media post that we did for a company in Canada versus Brazil, the different engagement that it got. You can see from this performance that people are more reactive on social media in Brazil than they are in Canada. Canadians are less likely to like and share and comment and post, etc. But that doesn't mean necessarily that you will get less purchases. Canadians are concerned with privacy. Canadians are concerned with loyalty to the brand. Brazilians, very, very engaged socially, using a lot of social media and also using mobile first rather than the computer. So just things to think about. But knowing all of that information means that you can do a better job at tailoring your objectives and making a better strategy, a more effective strategy online. So why can't you just use your Wisconsin or your New York or your US.com website to reach everyone, to reach the world? Well, search engines, as you may know, are localized. It's not just one Google, it's 150 plus Googles. There's Google Argentina, Google UK, Google Mexico, etc. So the searches will be very different because Google is optimizing for the local user. let's just take an example like Ireland. So Ireland looks like an easy go-to-market, strategy. It's potentially English speaking. That seems easy. It has a long history of international trade with the US. It has a friendly business environment, et cetera. And it seems to have similar platforms, Google, Meta, et cetera, as the US. So obviously a great choice to start with. Let's just pick Ireland as an example. Why can't I just use my .com website for Ireland? Well, your US website is technically or basically invisible in Ireland. This means that Ireland for Google is optimizing differently, and your products and your services are not showing up on the local searches. You need to use different keywords. You need to think about a top-level domain name. In Ireland, it's .ie and not .com. You need to think about metric and about Euro and GDPR compliance. GDPR compliance is a huge thing in Europe that has to be considered if you want to be digitally compliant and digitally secure and tell your customers and prospects that you're digitally compliant in Europe. Security, references, hosting, WhatsApp, payment gateways, delivery options, et cetera, all of these particular things, they sound like small things, but they add up to make sure that your digital presence and strategy is adequate for the Irish market. And Ireland is just one example, but it's the same for Spain, Mexico, France, et cetera. So what does that mean? It means that an example of the same search terms used are going to give me very different results according to where I'm sitting. And again, your US.com products or your website evidencing your products and services is not really going to be found in your target markets unless you adopt a localized strategy. A localized strategy that says, I'm dedicated to the market that I'm trying to enter. I'm willing to get my content translated into the language, to purchase the top level domain name, et cetera. I'm willing to show the commitment to the market that then the prospect, the local user will feel themselves seen and heard and can trust your brand. So what is a localized website? Well, a localized website is first and foremost about respecting your local buyer persona, respecting the local person that you want to sell to in Mexico, in Canada, et cetera. A localized website means that you're making content online that is relevant to your local buyer persona. Here's a list, but there's other things that are involved with it. The top 10 include being multilingual, registering your domain name, optimized for search engines, hosted optimally, et cetera, et cetera. And regulatory requirements are a big deal as well, especially if you're going into Europe. So the approach that we say, and often what we talk about, on these presentations and at the trade missions that we go to in collaboration with the U.S. Commercial Services, making sure that we're in alignment with all of the challenges and the understandings that the companies are facing when they want to go into Brazil or go into Mexico, et cetera. But it is essentially about having a localized approach. Going global is about going local. I'd like to introduce Miles from CEO of Apex Instruments, and this is a client, a corporate client of ours, somebody that we've been working with their company for a long time and helping them in their expansion into Latin America and Brazil. And I think this is a fantastic case study to really give evidence as to the localized strategy that we're trying to talk about. So please, Miles, take it away.
Well, thank you very much. In thinking about this today, I wasn't sure if we were going to be a case study on what to do or what not to do. I think we've covered some of both in our journey. So the first caveat that I'd put out there is that for everything we might have done right, I think there's 4 or 5 things that we can still do better. So please don't listen to my words or look at our story as a how-to guide to do any of this, because what I'm hearing both from James, from everybody really, is the same message, which is that localization really matters. A couple of years ago, we had a single .com website. We had no e-commerce. We expected everybody in the world to come to us. We're a difficult company to sell internationally because it's highly technical. About half of our business is across the world. We sell into 42 countries, 42 countries last year, highly regulated. We've got about 12,000 SKUs. So the complexity of that much international trade is difficult to manage. And that was really our starting point, was that we had a lot of distributors. And what that meant for the most part was that we were in people's catalogs in these other markets. We had no real relationship with clients. We had no real presence in these markets other than through our distributors. And so one of the things that we decided to do was to take a very different tact in how we manage that. Part of that was reducing our distributor network. I think we had 32 2 years ago, and I think we've got 6 right now. So a massive repositioning of how we sell internationally. Let me hit the next slide. So part of our focus over the last couple of years has been building new revenue centers. And if half of your business is tied to distributors basically telling your story in these markets, and you're building new revenue centers, your growth in that is really highly tied to these distributors telling a different story about you. And we were never convinced that that was the smartest thing to bet on. And so, that distributor redistribution really mattered a lot to us. And we also realized we need to start having more relationship with end users, with clients. We need to know what the regulatory structure was in Brazil. We needed to know why government approval of certain types of electronic devices in South Korea was the only way you're going to get into that market. And so we went through a lot of learning curve to help us realize what's it going to take to truly engage in these regions. Part of it was e-commerce, again, a couple of years ago, every sale we made was generally just picking up the phone when people called us from around the world. And that's a difficult model because, with such dispersion of our clients, we got calls we would see calls on our system at 2:00 in the morning when we're not able to take those. So our proof of concept really was focused on Spanish and Portuguese audiences. We had a fairly decent presence in South America. One of our executives loved to go to South America, so there's some personal bias in the equation. And we thought it was a good market. We noticed from our existing website that we had a lot of visitors from Spanish-speaking, Portuguese-speaking countries. Again, I say South and Central America, but really different parts of the world. So that was kind of the thought process to go down that road. Next slide. So one of the things that there was a part of me, I guess, a few years ago that thought, well, if I've got a Google Translator on there, why do I need a Portuguese website? Why do I need a native Spanish language website? When all you've got to do is pull down the little menu and I've got 100 different languages. And the answer is that while you might have that, and those translations can be a bit rough, nobody's going to find them. So it's not about, automating that task. It's really about kind of understanding the clients in these markets, building something a little bit different, and serving them, having them serve as a funnel back to the mothership, which is, kind of our operation here in the United States. One of the big pieces of all this that we haven't really talked about much is really integrating an aggressive CRM and analytics across all these sites. We can certainly do a lot better. And as I started reviewing our numbers and our material for this presentation today, I realized I probably should be writing a lot more checks to IBT, because what we've spent thus far has been money well spent, I'll say. Any way that you measure success, we've hit those goals and more with our friends at IBT. We've also here at Apex, we focus on HubSpot. So we've been pretty aggressive with all of the tools, our social media presence. Half of me thinks that we do too much in social media and we're too present, too annoying. We've built social media platforms for our different divisions. So we've really tried to be fairly aggressive, not just with saying we're going to put a website in native Spanish and that's going to solve all of our challenges in South America, because it really doesn't. It helps, but it doesn't do that. There's still a variety of other pieces that have to be integrated into that. And some of it is just as simple as getting on a plane and going down to different places. So in 2024, one of the things we don't really have in our ERP system is the ability to track specific leads back to new sales. We can see easily over 400,000 in last year from new clients that came from these two new websites, of about $440,000 in new quotes. In terms of active users, we've seen a big growth there. You know, our company is a B2B and it's fairly specific. We're never going to have millions of clients because of the specific nature of what we do, which is making essentially source emission testing equipment. So it's a very technical, very specialized market. But for us to build in Spanish-speaking countries, to move from kind of 100 active users to over 3,700 in just 12 months is, for us, a big success. We've got now outreach, and one of the things that we've got to focus on is that outreach also thinks about the localized users. So you can't put up a website in Spanish or Portuguese and then all your communications thereafter goes back to English and to a .com site. There has to be a consistency to what you're doing. We can certainly do a lot better than what we're doing, but in any way you measure it from our standpoint, these two relatively small spends have been beneficial. Next slide. So the website piece, you know, building these language-specific websites is part of it, but that's just I would think it's more of a tool. There's a single tool, and you really need to think about this larger regional SEO approach that you're going to need. For us, we think about trade shows. We think about our social media engagements, our subject matter expertise, our Google and LinkedIn ads. Again, we're mostly B2B. In fact, we're all B2B. So we probably are going to lean a little more heavy on the LinkedIn ads, and following up all of our correspondence with language-specific email marketing. One of the things that we learned through this process is that in general, we went into it thinking we were going to do well in Brazil, and we get a lot of inquiries from Brazil, but it's for us, it's always been a hard country to sell into. And so one of the things that we've learned for a variety of different reasons, there's just some countries that the juice isn't kind of worth the squeeze. I'm not saying Brazil is one of those countries, but there are other countries that it's just too, the regulatory structure, the cost of doing business, the uncertainty. We've got right now equipment in probably 90 to 100 countries. And there's, 3 or 4 that we probably just aren't going to focus on. Right now our business is really, we see a lot of activity in the Middle East. And so we probably should be a lot more sensitive to some of the markets that we're really not serving in native languages. And again, one of the second to the last bullet point on this page is an important one, is you know, I love the notion of saying we're going to spend a few $1,000s or 10 or 20 or 30,000, whatever the numbers are, on a website, and that's going to just, you know, my only job at that point is going out to the mailbox and cashing checks. The reality is that for us, as we've really got more empowered with some of these tools, we needed more staff to be able to manipulate them, to be able to use them the right way. So there's an investment that's from where we were. There was an investment that was required beyond just building the website, beyond just saying we're going to take out a few Google AdWords and try to move up the top of these search lists. So um, um, that's my general pitch. It's been a great relationship. IBT's been great. Nicest bunch of folks in the world. If they weren't, I'd say that pretty directly as well. I probably wouldn't be here. But um, this is all the work. This is the marketing work that allows you to be international. So let me pause
Thank
there.
you.
If there's if
Well,
there's
I
any
just want to say
questions.
thank you. Thank you so much, Miles, for saying that. We love working with you too. It's been a huge pleasure being part of Apex Instruments growth and strategy. And, you know, we learn a lot from so much from our clients all the time in conversation back and forth. This slide is the Portuguese website, the Brazil website in Portuguese, as well as the Latin America, so the .lat website in Spanish. So there's geo-targeting in the back end of this, which means that we are geo-targeting certain regions, certain areas geographically, as well as audiences. And I just included 2 little snapshots as well, because as Miles pointed towards, so much of this is also understanding the data behind it, you know, looking at the traffic. Now you have footprint, you have a digital real estate asset that is working for you. Not an in-browser translation, but a real digital real estate working for you in your chosen target market. So what does that look like behind the scenes? That looks like all of the information that you now have. You can see, oh, we got more traffic this month. Why did we get more traffic this month? Oh, we got more visitors on this particular page. Okay, this is the content that they're interacting with. So it's informative, and then you can adapt your strategy based on new information. So that, as Miles says, is so helpful when, for example, he goes to a trade show and prepares for that trade show. We give more information, more assets into that particular market, making sure that we're gearing up and revving up that broader digital presence, so that Apex Instruments content and products can be found in the target market. So I
Sometimes
hope
it's as
that
simple as little things like multilingual, depending on where you're going, multilingual QR codes
yeah,
for product literature. It's a small thing, but
100%.
it makes a difference.
100%, exactly. So as a final little takeaway, and you know, using Apex Instrument as a great example of going specifically after the Latin American Brazil region, localized checklist. What is a localized website? It is relevant to the local buyer, and it includes such things as mobile enablement, being careful about load speeds, optimizing for local search engines, high-res imagery, easy to navigate, or thinking about the user navigation experience, brand consistency, and the correct top-level domain names. And we're here to help. So with the U.S. Commercial Service, we have different resources, lots of resources that companies can tap into and learn more about. And with that, handing back to James.
Thank you very much, Ava. That was a fantastic presentation. And thank you also, Miles. That was very great to hear from you on the lessons learned out there. There was a question for you from one of the audience. They wanted to know if you can comment more specifically on your reduction of distributors to 6 and the type of traffic on your multilingual websites. Are they end users that are referred to this reduced distributor base?
Almost all end users, yeah. One of the because of the technical nature of what we do, we end up providing 99% of the technical support, the technical sales, And so if we're, again, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but we had distributors that we were just in a catalog. And so one of their customers would reach out to them, and we would do all the back and forth, all the heavy lifting to figure out exactly what that customer needed and how to save them money and how to, minimize duties and tariffs and things like that. So we would do literally 90% of the work, 99% of the work, and lose a lot of margin. And so for us, we really said, okay, we want to have distributors who will do some localized service. So who have enough technical repair, we could stock some parts there. And so we started building kind of a model of what we want a distributor. And there can be a reseller. So we started distinguishing between resellers and distributors. And authorized distributors are places that can do some level of, can replace a DGM meter or something, that have some level of capability beyond just shipping boxes. And the other thing we did that was important, we gave huge amounts of territorial exclusivity to people in the past, where we'd have one company that was our exclusive representative in Australia or in Colombia or in the UAE or wherever. And we've clawed most of those back. We just generally don't give exclusive territories anymore. And because of that, we just have even some of the public tenders, we have government officials that come to our website, check pricing, and so we've also published our pricing worldwide, and much to the chagrin of a lot of our distributors who don't want us to do that. We felt like price and transparency. We've had distributors that were selling our exact equipment for 2x, 3x even what it was selling for retail, and we didn't want that to happen. So this also struck a small note for transparency.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up with the distributors not liking the pricing transparency, because I hear that a lot with our clients, as that is one of our recommendations, our best practices for our SEO service, is that transparency, that pricing, to allow the consumer on the other end to basically understand whether or not you're within their budget. And so, can you kind of walk us through how you got to that point of deciding to put pricing on your website? I'm just a little bit more interested in hearing the story behind that.
Yeah, I think part of it was the fact that we were starting to see public tenders where, it's not uncommon for a public tender to come out, and I'll just make up one. We'll say coming out of Jordan or something. It doesn't really matter. And then all of a sudden we would get requests for that exact same equipment from 6 or 7 different companies, some of which we knew, some of which we might not know. And so there's a lot of companies that basically just respond to these public tenders. And what we would find is that our distributors were often were going in, and we saw the actual bids, so that for a system that was $10,000, the bid from some of these distributors might be $23,000. So it's well beyond the retail of it. And we would sometimes lose these bids because our equipment was being sold for ultra retail, super high prices. And so we just thought, we're going to kind of democratize the landscape a little bit and put it out there. And, there'll be some winners and maybe some losers in the process, but it gets us out of this hot seat of having to negotiate these relationships from foreign countries that we didn't, the reality is we don't really know what's going on those. We'd get stories, well, that's my ex-brother-in-law and he's gone out there and started a company and he's trying to take our visit. We don't have the bandwidth to solve those disputes.
Yeah, I've heard those stories before as well. So that's good to hear that kind of that rationalization, that explanation there. Another
One other
question.
thing,
Sorry,
one
go
other
ahead.
thing I'll point out about that is that now that we've got it live linked to our website, between our ERP system and our website, we can really be dynamic real-time pricing. So if anybody has a question about what a price is, they don't have, and they got something quoted. A lot of times these projects will take months for them to come to fruition. So they quoted something back last October, and they want to see what the pricing is today. We were working ourselves to death, double, triple, quadruple quoting the exact same thing over and over again. And now with the transparency and pricing, they can go out there and see themselves.
That's a
Because
very
it's all
nice feature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
very
particularly
convenient.
with the uncertainty of pricing and tariffs and shipping and all the challenges that we face in 2025, I think that's going to benefit us greatly from reducing the bureaucratic overload of our process.
It can get overwhelming. So I unfortunately understand that all too well in government with the bureaucratic overload. One follow-up question to that. So you're getting great response from consumers. Do you see social media as playing a role, this marketing through social media? Do you see value for B2B in social media? And can you kind of articulate what that value would be?
Yeah, I think we're quite active for a company our size on social media. And again, it's we tend to think of all of this as a team. So there's no one thing that solves the equation that drives sales. All of this kind of plays in together. So we've significantly upped our social media game. And part of it with social media is just you've got to be a good neighbor. So you can post stuff, but you also have to follow people and comment on it and be interactive. And it's amazing around here, if you go and ask anybody for help, you'll generally get a yes. And I think that's probably true in most parts of the world. So if you want to be a good neighbor, you just participate in your neighbor's feed, and it goes a long way.
That's some good advice. Actually, some very, very good advice. Sound basic,
So
best practice advice.
if you're posting stuff and nobody reposts it, nobody looks at it, ask yourself the question: when's the last time I did that for somebody else? You reap
I
what you
think
sow.
that's the key. That's the key right there. I think
Yeah.
that's perfect answer right there. Well, I have a question now for Ava because I obviously didn't ask her the social media value one because the answer is going to be yes, of course. We all know the answer. A question for Ava, and you can answer this too, Miles. I think this comes down to basically opinion. But the question is, what is the best practice when having a hyperlink on your website? Should that link open to a new tab? Opinions?
Yes, it should open to a new tab. You want to always, you want to always direct, like if you open something up that gives them two tabs, don't take them away from your website. That's too easy. Better for them to have two tabs where you're giving them more information. So all of our website, for example, all of our blogs opens up multiple different tabs. So the person has to then, navigate back to your website. You want them to stay on your website as long as possible. That's the goal.
I would say
Fantastic.
it depends. It depends. If your website is well designed, navigating to different parts of, so if it's an information tab where, again, not to, y'all are way better at this than we are, but we've tried to think about new tabs being tied to standalone information content versus when they hit you're trying to take them on a journey through your site. And so we tend to think of it maybe slightly differently.
I would agree with that. Basically, if they're going from like a different product on your website, but I was thinking more like a blog or a video or like a link to this, etc., then you open up another tab.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
if
for
they're
us,
navigating between pages, then it could be the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't
Perfect
go to our
responses.
website to see what we do because it's probably not right.
That's perfect responses because I hear both. Honestly, I hear yes, new tab, and then also the argument Miles gives of the customer journey and going forward through the pages without opening into a new tab. So to answer this question, which I was going to answer this this way to begin with, but I wanted to ask your opinions first, was just like Ava said and Miles said, it depends. It depends upon what you want to do with your website. For me, like Ava said, for blogs, kind of changing gears, I want a new tab myself personally. That said, I do get lost in tabs sometimes, especially if I'm open, if I'm going down a rabbit hole and I'm opening link after link, where was I originally? So I can see the staying on the page. So really, it depends on your page, your content, and your preferences, I believe.
Yeah, at 8 a.m. in the morning, I've only got 5 tabs open. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I got about 140, so.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then I don't know about you, but I close them out at the end of the day just as a practice. So I got to start all over again the next day. Let's see here. And I think that's it for the questions, unless there's anything else in the chat that I missed. I think that was it. So there we go. Learn more. So we'll go ahead and bring this webinar to a close here. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining. And I'd like to thank our host, Colin, for the introductions. And I'd like to direct everybody on the webinar to